Hi biologists, let's start by looking at the learning objectives for this lesson. If we follow the syllabus, you should notice that this material is marked out for the higher level paper only. At the end of this reading, you should be able to explain how carbon dioxide is a controlling factor in the human breathing system. You should also be able to investigate the effect of exercise on the rate of breathing. What does this actually mean? What are we trying to understand today? We are trying to understand how carbon dioxide is a controlling factor, how it determines the human breathing system, or in other words, how it determines the human breathing rate. We should also know how to investigate the effect of exercise on the breathing rate. Reading Chapter 30, Human Breathing, continued. Picking it up at page 343 at the heading of Control of Human Breathing. You might notice that this material is marked out for the higher level paper only. Earlier in this chapter we saw that the rate of human breathing is controlled by the brain in the medulla oblongata, MOB. M-O-B, medulla oblongata, and B for breathing. So the medulla oblongata is in charge of the rate of breathing. The brain controls breathing by monitoring the levels of carbon dioxide in the blood that passes through it. This is an example of homeostasis, maintaining a constant internal environment. Carbon dioxide gas is a slightly acidic gas. It dissolves in water to form a weak acid called carbonic acid. We should know this from our knowledge on acid rain. Carbon dioxide dissolves in rainwater to form acid rain or carbonic acid. We also have this in Coke. The carbon dioxide dissolves in the water in the can of Coke, forming an acid. If you put a coin into a can of Coke, it'll eat the dirt off the coin and you'll be left with a clean coin. Carbonic acid causes the pH of the blood and the tissue fluid to fall slightly from its normal value of 7.4. Now, blood pH is always virtually neutral. If carbon dioxide dissolves in the plasma of the blood, it will cause the blood to get more acidic. Acidic values have a pH value of less than 7. This is why the book is saying that the pH of the blood will fall. It's another way of saying that the blood gets more acidic. Special centres in the brain detect the slight drop in pH and react by sending out impulses or messages by means of nerves down to the diaphragm, down to the intercostal muscles that cause us to breathe. Breathing allows gas exchange to take place in the lungs. We should already know that gas exchange involves swapping gases, getting rid of carbon dioxide and swapping it for oxygen instead. If we exercise vigorously, the level of carbon dioxide in our blood will increase because of respiration. Carbon dioxide is a waste product of respiration. Respiration is getting energy out of our food. Obviously, we need more energy the more we exercise, so the greater the rate of respiration, therefore the greater the release of carbon dioxide from our cells out into our blood. This will result in a drop in blood pH. The brain will detect this change and will cause our breathing rate to increase. Now, it's very important to realise that our brain does not normally respond to low levels of oxygen. It's interesting to note that we breathe in response to high levels of carbon dioxide rather than responding to low levels of oxygen. So basically, if we hold our breath, we eventually have to give in and take a breath, no matter how much of a temper tantrum we are having. We give in and take a breath not because we're getting short of oxygen. We give in and take a breath because we have too much carbon dioxide in our blood. It's making our blood too acidic. So our brain will respond to the high levels of carbon dioxide and will force us to take a breath in. Carbon dioxide controls gas exchange, therefore. In chapter 24, we saw that carbon dioxide causes the opening and closing of stomata in the leaf. Now, it's a rather interesting link that carbon dioxide controls gas exchange in humans and also controls gas exchange in plants. Stomata are little openings on the undersurface of leaves. They open and close to let gases in and out, to allow gas exchange, and carbon dioxide determines the opening and closing of these stomata. We now know that carbon dioxide also causes the rate of breathing in humans to increase. For both of these reasons, we can say that carbon dioxide operates as a controlling factor. It determines the rate of gas exchange in both plants and animals. Turning to page 344. Here we have an activity 19b. To investigate the effect of exercise on breathing rate. Just to mention, we have to do this activity or else the activity on pulse rate. Obviously, it's much better if the activity is carried out in reality. However, if you understand the aim of the experiment and are able to follow the logic of the steps, it makes memorizing the method a lot easier and preferable to learning off a series of steps that you are bound to get muddled. The aim of this experiment is to investigate the effect of exercise on breathing rate. So we're going to vary the level of exercise and we're going to measure the rate of breathing. How are we going to measure the rate of breathing? We will measure that by counting how many breaths you take in a minute. For those of you able for a bit more, we are varying the effect of exercise. So the effect of exercise is the independent variable. We are measuring the breathing rate. The breathing rate is the dependent variable. We might remember that from junior cert projects. Work in pairs, one person recording the results. 2. Sit down in a chair and rest for a few minutes. This is getting you to relax because in a moment we're going to be taking the breathing rate at rest. Now don't forget, which is a vital thing in this experiment, is that breathing in and breathing out is considered to be one breath. So in other words, count all the numbers of breaths in or inhalations, or else just count all your exhalations per minute while you're at rest. You have to repeat this 2 more times. So what you are doing is you are taking your breathing rate at rest and you're doing it 3 times because you want to get an average. 6. Calculate your average breathing rate per minute. This is measured in breaths per minute or BPM at rest by adding the 3 values and dividing the total by 3. This is basically getting an average, which we should know from maths. We have 3 values, divide by 3, that gives us the average. This is called the resting breathing rate, and this is used as a control. Now, in an experiment, a control is an experiment that you set up for comparison purposes. This is our breathing rate at rest. We're interested in investigating the effect of exercise on our breathing rate. So all our breath rates after exercise will be compared to our breathing rate at rest. So our breathing rate at rest is functioning as a control. It's an experiment that we set up. We use it for comparison purposes. We compare our results to the control. Now we will start exercising by walking slowly for 5 minutes. Count your breathing rate per minute immediately after walking. Now, strictly speaking, in a proper science experiment, you should then rest for perhaps 2 minutes. And then you should walk slowly again, count your breathing rate, and rest for 2 minutes. And you should do this 3 times and get an average. Now we're going to raise the level of exercise by walking briskly. So walk briskly for 5 minutes and count your breathing rate immediately after walking. And again, you should rest for 2 minutes, and then you should walk briskly for 5 minutes, rest for 2, and do this 3 times and get an average. Exercise strenuously for 5 minutes. They suggest step up and down in a chair every 3 seconds or run. Count your breathing rate per minute immediately after exercise. Compare your resting rate with the rate immediately after each type of exercise and record your results in a table. Those able for a bit more should be able to see that the varying of the exercise is the independent variable, the breathing rate is the dependent variable, the controlled variables are the length of time for which I exercise, the length of time for which I rest. These 2 factors should be kept the same every time I do the experiment. The experiment is also made more accurate by getting an average. So for example here, you have trial 1, the breathing rate before exercise. So let's pretend that that was 14 breaths a minute. The trial 2, breathing rate before the exercise at rest was 16 breaths. And trial 3, when you did it, you got 14 breaths. So adding these gives a total of 44. And then to get the average, you divide by 3, giving you an average rate of 14.6. Well, you can't really have 14.6 of a breath, so I suppose we'd round that up to 15. Now, when you look at your breathing rates after exercise, it should be noticeable that the rate of breathing increases. So if we round up our resting rate to 15, just in theory, you should notice that these breathing rates should be greater than 15. So pretending this one might be 18, this one might go up to 21, and after strenuous exercise, this one might go up to 26. So the pattern you should notice is that when you compare the breathing rates after different types of exercise, the breathing rates should increase compared to the resting rate, and the more strenuous the exercise, the more your breathing rate increases. As a remark, after exercise, the rate of breathing often falls below the resting rate. So perhaps this person had 15 breaths a minute at rest, and now, amazingly, after strenuous exercise, she only has 11 breaths per minute. This would be due to the fact that she is taking deeper breaths. Deeper breaths, less of them. Now we have arrived at the end of the lesson. Have we achieved our objectives? At the end of this section, you should be able to explain how carbon dioxide is a controlling factor in the human breathing system. You should also be able to investigate the effect of exercise on the breathing rate.